Chapter 8. The tablet as institutional structure. Just like how the pattern of the golden ratio stabilizes and repeats when it reaches the number 13, so do the layers of meaning hidden within the tablet of Shamash. The purpose of every business and institution is to generate surplus energy for the people who create it. They do this through their function. The function of every business or institution is the fulfilling of whichever need it has been created around. For example, the purpose of a restaurant is not to make food, it exists to make money. The food it sells is the function it performs to achieve that goal. On the next pass through the tablet, Shamash represents a business owner, CEO or president. Shamash is the CEO of the corporation or institution. On this pass, the tablet represents all business. We will view it as a retail shopping chain, the hypothetical Shamash clothing company. The two figures above Shamash's throne are the people who work in all the stores. The people who must be there every day doing the heavy lifting. The idol is on a slight angle because the business is off the ground. It is up and running. The person holding the leg of the table the idol is resting on represents the individual store managers. They keep the operation stable by not allowing it to sway off target. The person behind the manager represents a district manager. He has one hand free, which he is using to direct the whole scene. The other hand has been offered to the manager, who is grasping it as a type of additional counterbalance. The person a manager can call upon for extra support when needed. The next person is the customer. Note that each of their headdresses are getting increasingly larger. The district manager is greater than the manager, but the customer is the most important part of the equation. The customer is applauding, which means they are satisfied. The energy then flows from the customer to make up the throne Shamash, the business owner, sits upon. But how do we know this for sure? Count the number of little squares that make up the bottom of the cell the two little people are trapped in. There are 2 rows of 15. 15 times 2, plus the 2 people we can see in the box, is 32. There are 32 levels to the pillar that holds up the roof Shamash sits under. The number of customers determines the height of your ceiling, or profits. The base of the pillar is flowing out of 2 golden ratio spirals. The top of the pillar is capped with the same golden ratio spirals. Everything flows from the law and is limited by the law. Every business and institution is a living circuit that must follow this pattern of activity, or it collapses in on itself. Primary energy flows from positive to negative. Secondary energy gets drawn from negative back to positive. The size of Shamash represents the potential of the idea behind the venture. The potential creates an inflated expectation within the owner and investors. These two things together are the motive force behind all the effort.
The idea must generate enough surplus energy to justify the keeping of the circuit alive. Which means that the first priority is always to make sure the people the circuit needs to function get fed. The amount each gets compensated is based on the value of their contribution. Those who simply show up and fulfill basic tasks that require little responsibility get paid the least. They're not strong enough to do harder work and are unwilling to educate themselves, so they have more to offer. These are the people who eventually become dependents, anchors that burden the circuit's flow. Their negativity only grows as profits rise and their compensation does not increase. They cannot accept that unskilled labor only has so much value because anyone can do it. They do not take personal responsibility for their life choices and often blame others for the circumstances they find themselves in. People doing manual labor get paid more than clerks because they do harder work. However, their compensation is also limited by the number of people available to get the job done. Without the added value of knowledge, these people must survive strictly on their physical strength. The instant that strength fails, they will be cast aside and replaced like an oxen or mule with a broken leg. The third person is the one who brings new knowledge to the organization. They have the ability to negotiate higher compensation based on the value of their expertise. Once again, the customer is the most important part of the equation because they feed everyone. Labor by its very nature is exploitive. That is because every component must add more value than they are compensated for, so that surplus energy from customer purchases can be gathered to satisfy the expectations of the person or group that initiated the circuit in the first place. The cost an organization has to pay to have each of these three roles performed is determined by the amount of competition that exists at each level. If an endless supply of unskilled laborers exists, then competition for a single position is high, which means the value of that contribution goes down. If any part of this equation stops functioning or gets thrown out of balance due to out-of-control expectation, intolerable levels of abuse, or outright disillusionment, the circuit will be broken and everyone involved will once again be left to fend for themselves. Everyone at every level is free to leave whenever they want if the amount they are being compensated is not satisfactory. However, once settled, most never do leave. That is because the compensation, no matter where they go, changes little. The only way to receive more is to increase the potential they have established within themselves. This eventually means risking what they have to try and establish the creation of their own circuit. Most are unwilling or unable to attempt this based on the sum total of the choices they have made, which has created the circumstance they find themselves in. Eventually, everyone settles into a role within the hierarchy of productivity. Everyone must generate their worth or starve. Because of this, there is no need to enslave people. People enslave themselves through their own lack of adaptability. To build your own circuit or create your own opportunity takes a tremendous amount of resources and requires the ability to overcome every resistance that comes along the way in the process of doing so. This is a task that is so daunting that the average person instead settles into their role within a system created by another. Each of the roles demonstrated in this image predict the requirements and inevitable outcomes of both business and institutional growth. Take a moment to identify the equivalent role titles for any institution you can think of or have ever worked for. Who makes the rules? Who keeps the machine up and running? Who oversees the daily operation? Who enforces the rules that come from above? From whom is the energy being drawn to justify keeping the machine running? In education, Shamash would be the Minister of Education. The heavy lifters would be the teachers and building caretakers. The manager would be the principal. The district manager would be the head of the regional school board. The customers are the students. In religion, using Catholicism in this example, Shamash would be the Pope. The heavy lifters would be the priests, deacons, and building caretakers. The manager would be the bishops. The district managers would be the cardinals and archbishops. The congregation are the customers.
Finally, the golden ratio spiral at the top of the pillar that holds up or limits the height of the ceiling shows another very interesting truth. The golden ratio is the mathematics of a type of exponential growth. The golden ratio spirals at the bottom of the pillar is showing that everything flows from the law. The golden ratio spirals at the top of the pillar means when exponential growth can no longer be maintained, the limit of the law has been reached. The golden ratio spirals beneath Shamash's shield are there because the symbol on the shield represents the law that creates both the circumstance and sets the limits. The trap of meeting need. It is precisely because every business must fulfill a human need that once all need has been met, there is no longer any justification for the business to continue existing, at which point the business or institution closes and those jobs are lost. That is why, as basic needs of the majority are met, there are two inevitable outcomes. First, planned obsolescence gets implemented as a solution to guarantee that need remains constant. Planned obsolescence is a countdown to business collapse because eventually the quality of the product degrades to the point that the cost of the product versus the time the product will last, cancel out the value of purchasing it to meet the need. Second, government stabilizes the system by creating and expanding unproductive jobs to maintain employment, so the economy is guaranteed to maintain a base amperage in an attempt to avoid system collapse. Both of those inevitable outcomes lead to the exponential depletion of resources and the exponential creation of waste. The human race presently faces several crises that are growing exponentially. The current problems humanity is facing have all been caused by monetary policy. Because of this, human labor has decreased in value to the point it can no longer be transferred into enough money to fulfill the basic needs of the majority.
To Shamash, as the god of judgment, humanity will be judged based on its ability to solve the following equation. All taxes for governments and profits for businesses come from a single source, the individual. For civilization to continue growing, there is a directly proportional relationship between the creation and meeting of human need and the expansion of the economy. The more the economy is expected to grow, the more social conditioning must be used to ensure that need, real or manufactured, grows at the same rate as the expected economic growth. How does society get maintained when the money people put their labor into no longer stores enough value to meet their basic needs? The more codependent the individual becomes to any system, the less resilience they have. The less resilience they have, the less adaptable they are. The less adaptable a person becomes, the less innovative they are. Should a solution to this problem not be found, the end of the growth cycle has been reached. The wave collapses and the wrath of the law gets unleashed upon the land. After the chaos settles, the most resilient survivors enter the new resistance constant reality phase from which the next cycle begins. You are left with these two hints. 1. On the environmental front, you cannot produce your way out of a crisis created by overproduction. 2. On the economic front, you cannot simply send people money in replacement of the daily labor effort that naturally occurs in nature. That is because if current is constant and resistance decreases, the corresponding decrease in potential manifests as declining resilience. Whenever a government gives money to remove resistances for unproductive people, they are robbing those individuals of the growth and resilience they should have earned by overcoming the resistance on their own. For the highly productive, the more one specializes, the more compensation they receive. However, the only choice you have in life is to consciously choose to engage resistance, regardless of your ability to remove it by using your earned currency to overcome it. The fact most do not do this accounts for why so many high earners are in reality useless people. That is why both poverty and success are traps. Every living thing is required by energy law to labor every day and generate enough surplus energy to survive so they can do it all again the next day. Civilization is unsustainable long-term because it replaces the need to constantly adapt to the environment with specialization. The cost of this is resilience in all other fields of study other than the one specialized in. Should a specialty no longer be needed, individuals can still adapt, but the time frame required to do so is often too short to avoid the massive lifestyle adjustment that comes with the valley they must pass through.
It is the resistance of hard times that obligates, through action, the increasing of potential to create strong people. Those strong people are unaware of that relationship. Once in stable good times, those same strong people seek to reduce all resistance, which leads to the weakening of the next generation. It is the natural path of least resistance inclination that inevitably leads to a return of hard times. This occurs once environmental circumstance changes and the resilience-resistance demands of the individual has been lost by the majority. That is why societies, throughout all of time, follow the predictable pattern of establishment, expansion, and collapse. This concludes the basic lessons the tablet of Shamash is attempting to teach. In order to overcome the many obstacles humanity currently faces, it is imperative that you realize your potential by becoming the most productive and resilient individual possible. The second half of this book has been designed as a guide to help you achieve this goal. In the sequel to this work, we will cover the final chapters in this book. The tablet as structure versus content. The tablet as personal growth. The tablet as astrophysics, the source of Shamash's knowledge. The pattern every life follows, Shamash's gift. Why the understanding of Shamash matters. They are the advanced lessons Shamash has to offer humanity.